When discussing individuals with disabilities, whether mental or physical, it is essential to affirm that they are entitled to the same rights, respect, and dignity as anyone else. Recognizing and treating them as full members of society is a cornerstone of any inclusive and ethical community. But perceptions of people with disabilities can vary widely among different individuals and cultures. And sadly, not all these perceptions are respectful or humane. In today's discussion, we will examine a harrowing instance where negative attitudes towards disabled people had catastrophic consequences: the Sagamihara stabbings carried out by Satoshi Uematsu. I recently read an interesting article about the perceptions of disability in Japan, which highlighted some of the ongoing challenges. According to a March 2023 survey reported by the Japan Times, around 90% of disabled people face discrimination and prejudice. Despite significant legal reforms aimed at improving accessibility and reducing discrimination, many individuals with disabilities still report experiencing prejudice. In Japan, societal attitudes towards disability can sometimes reflect traditional views that affect family dynamics and social interactions. For example, consider the Japanese singer Miyuki Sakai, who endured long-term shame from her in-laws because her daughter has Down syndrome. Her father-in-law even concealed the existence of his grandchild and avoided her completely. He only began to accept his granddaughter when he became ill and incapacitated. Many people with disabilities end up living in care homes because their families are unable to take care of them. However, it is important to acknowledge that some do maintain strong connections with their families. So keeping this in mind, we are going to talk about a very disturbing case involving these people. Tsukui Lily Garden, a residential care center located in Kanagawa Prefecture, was run by the Kanagawa Kyodokai Social Welfare Organization. This sizable facility could accommodate over 120 residents who were cared for by staff and volunteers. Its peaceful setting near the bank of the Sagami River added a homey feeling to the place. But unfortunately, this once beautiful home for the disabled had to be demolished, leaving only the gymnasium and administration building standing. The reason was tragic. A massacre occurred within Tsukui Lily Garden in late July 2016. In just one night, more than a dozen people with disabilities were brutally murdered. The perpetrator, once a caretaker at the facility, made the event even more unimaginable. The murderer was a 26-year-old Satoshi Uematsu. After committing the atrocity, he turned himself in to the police just 2 hours later, smiling gleefully. He even handed over the bag of knives he had used, still stained with blood, which shocked the officers. His sinister grin never seemed to leave his face. He was a proud murderer, satisfied with his crime. Satoshi Uematsu was born in January 1990 in a town close to Tokyo. Coming from an artistic family, his mother, a cartoonist, and his father, an art teacher in primary schools, the Uematsus moved to Sagamihara City when Satoshi was 1 year old. There, they settled and became permanent residents. Throughout his public schooling, Satoshi was popular among his peers for his charm and ability to make others laugh. During his high school years, Satoshi underwent a dramatic transformation. Initially known for his excellent manners, he began to engage in inappropriate behavior, marking a complete reversal in his conduct. Reports suggest he was involved in multiple thefts with close friends and was found intentionally damaging property. Additionally, Satoshi started drinking at a young age, which exacerbated his erratic behavior. Despite these issues, Satoshi managed to enroll at Teikyo University. Around this time, he developed an interest in tattoos, a choice that is frowned upon in Japanese culture due to its association with the Yakuza. But he was undeterred by societal views. He covered his chest and upper arm with tattoos. He dreamed of becoming a tattoo artist after graduating in 2012, but that ambition was never realized. In 2012, Satoshi took a job as a part-time caregiver at the Tsukui Lily Garden care home, operated by the Kanagawa Community Association. It's surprising to note that he initially performed well in his role, despite a reported incident in 2007 where he allegedly shoved a wheelchair-bound individual. It remains unclear if this incident was formally documented or if he faced any consequences. Despite these earlier issues, Satoshi was promoted to a full-time position in April 2013. He developed a reputation as a clever and a dedicated worker with promising career prospects. Outwardly, he seemed kind and reportedly found people with disabilities cute. However, the reality was more complex. Over time, more troubling aspects of Satoshi's character came to light. He was reportedly seen striking residents of the facility in 2014 and 2015, leading to multiple staff inspections and numerous warnings about his behavior. Throughout 2015, concerns grew at the care facility about Satoshi Uematsu. He was no longer the reliable employee he once was. After another incident of resident abuse, he left his job at the Tsukui Lily Garden on February 6, 2016. Unemployed and harboring a growing resentment towards people with disabilities, Satoshi was at a crossroads. In the days following his resignation, Satoshi concocted what he believed to be a revolutionary idea. Reflecting on his experiences at the care facility, the challenges of caring for the residents, the visible sadness of their families, and the struggles of the residents themselves, he thought, why not just erase them altogether? He considered this thought so significant that he felt compelled to share it immediately. That same month, Satoshi visited the home of Tadamori Oshima, the Speaker of the House of Representatives of Japan. He was driven by the motive to deliver a letter he had written proposing the legalization of euthanasia for people with disabilities. In his letter, he argued that such a law would relieve individuals and their families from the misery of dealing with disabilities, claiming it could even prevent World War III and make the world a better place. Tragically, the letter didn't just contain this proposal. Satoshi detailed his readiness to act on his beliefs by committing the crime himself. He offered to demonstrate by targeting 2 care homes, claiming he could erase between 200 and 400 disabled individuals without harming the staff. He presented himself as a sort of radical researcher, signing off with his name, address, and other details, setting the stage for a grim sequence of events. Upon his initial attempt to deliver the letter, Satoshi Uematsu was turned away by the security at the gate. But he was undeterred. He returned the next day, this time leaving the letter with the security before heading home. When the authorities read the content of this letter, they were initially shocked by its extreme nature, almost mistaking it for a sick prank. But recognizing the serious implications, they took immediate action. Following this, Satoshi was detained and questioned by the police. The details of this initial questioning were not made public. Instead, he was sent to a psychiatric ward for a mental health assessment. Strangely, just 2 weeks later, in early March, he was released from the ward. The doctor in charge declared him not a threat, a decision that would later be seen as a grave error. In July of the same year, on the 25th, Satoshi took a bus to Tokyo to retrieve his car from his family home. He then collected various knives and stopped at a hardware store to purchase a hammer and binding bands. Afterward, he traveled to Shinjuku, where he rented a hotel room and dyed his hair blonde, mentally preparing for what he believed was a heroic act. The crime was extensively recorded by CCTV cameras. On July 26, 2016, at approximately 1:37 a.m., Satoshi began his planned attack. Security footage from the Tsukui Lily Garden Daycare Center captured a black Honda approaching the back road. After parking, Satoshi emerged from the driver's seat and opened the trunk of his car. He then retrieved a duffel bag filled with the knives he intended to use in the horrific events that were about to unfold. Satoshi Uematsu, a former employee, knew the layout of the care facility well and used this knowledge to enter undetected through a back route. He approached a window in the southeast wing of the building and broke it with a hammer to gain entry around 2:10 a.m. Inside, he encountered an on-duty employee, whom he quickly bound and gagged before taking the keys. With full access to the building, he was free to move around as he pleased. Satoshi systematically moved from the southeast to the west end of the building, entering each room and stabbing sleeping disabled residents in the neck, one by one. His rampage resulted in the murder of 19 people, ranging in age from 18 to 70, and the injury of 26 others. 13 of the injured were critically hurt but survived. After the attack, Satoshi bizarrely went on Twitter to post about Japan and world peace before fleeing the scene. The police were alerted by staff and arrived at the facility to find a devastating scene of violence. The emergency response included dispatching at least 29 ambulances. Neighbors were horrified as they witnessed numerous victims being carried out to the ambulances. The wounded were taken to at least 6 hospitals in the western Tokyo area. Families of the victims were heartbroken. Their anguish was palpable as they confronted this tragic scene. Regarding Satoshi's subsequent legal proceedings, after turning himself in, he underwent psychiatric evaluations to determine his criminal responsibility. He was diagnosed with a mild narcissistic personality disorder, which led him to see himself as a superior and a savior. However, the assessment concluded that he was aware of right and wrong. Nearly a year after the incident, he was declared fit to stand trial for his crimes. On February 24, 2019, Satoshi was charged with 19 counts of murder, 24 counts of attempted murder, 2 counts of unlawful detention resulting in injury, 3 counts of illegal confinement. During his trial, his defense team argued that marijuana had impaired his mental state at the time of the crime. However, Satoshi showed no remorse, neither apologizing nor denying his crimes. In January 2020, Satoshi pleaded not guilty and continued to express his belief that individuals with disabilities served no purpose in life. In a disturbing gesture during the trial, he attempted to bite his own finger, which he seemingly offered as an apology to the victims' families, a gesture that only exacerbated the family's grief. The Yokohama District Court sentenced Uematsu to death on March 16, 2020. The judge stated that Uematsu's actions were driven not by a pathological condition, but by his experiences and beliefs shaped during his employment at the care facility. The judge emphasized the deliberate and brutal nature of the crime in the sentencing. During the sentencing, Uematsu remained emotionless and was denied a request to speak at the conclusion of the trial. The legal proceedings did not end with the sentencing. In April 2022, Uematsu sought a retrial, asserting his right to argue his innocence despite the finality of his original verdict. The Yokohama District Court considered his petition but ultimately dismissed it in April 2023. As of now, Satoshi Uematsu remains on death row, spending his days in the Tokyo Detention Center, with no further legal recourse apparent. This tragedy indeed highlights significant oversight and raises critical questions about the response of the Japanese police and healthcare systems. Satoshi Uematsu's prior communications with authorities, where he explicitly described his violent intentions, were a clear red flag that was seemingly dismissed. The decision to release him after only a brief psychiatric evaluation without subsequent monitoring is particularly troubling given his detailed threats. This response suggests a gap in the protocols for threat assessment and crisis intervention, which many believe could have prevented this disaster. The public's anger towards perceived police incompetence is understandable, as basic safety measures following such explicit threats might have averted this tragedy. Discussing Satoshi Uematsu inevitably evokes strong emotions because of the heinous nature of his crimes. His actions also touch upon a larger social issue: the persistent stigmatization and dehumanization of people with disabilities. This case painfully shows that legislative changes, while necessary, are not sufficient on their own to change deep-seated attitudes and prejudices. True progress requires a cultural shift towards greater empathy, understanding, and inclusion, which remains a significant challenge for Japan and many other societies. That's all for today. Thanks for watching.